You don't get it? Someone like you will never be anything more than a maid. Now get out of my sight." The words stabbed like ice. Clara Reynolds, senior supervisor, stood tall in her stiff navy suit, glaring down at Ava Johnson, 28, African-American, standing motionless with her cleaning cart in the opulent corridor of the Imperial Heights Hotel. Ava tightened her grip on the cart. Her knuckles whitened, but she kept her voice low and even. "Yes, ma'am," she replied, swallowing her pride. The grand lobby pulsed with quiet luxury. Wealthy guests floated past in tailored suits and silk dresses, their conversations blending with soft piano notes. Not a single one turned to acknowledge the humiliation unfolding. Nearby, Logan, the young bellboy with an arrogant swagger, chuckled cruelly as he brushed past her. "You better watch yourself, Ava. You people are lucky to have jobs like this." Ava stared at the polished floor, her chest tight. Years of enduring insults, whispered slur, and cold dismissals had taught her the only safe way through: silence and hard work. The Imperial Heights Hotel towered over Midtown Manhattan, a shimmering palace of gold and marble. Crystal chandeliers hung from soaring ceilings. Vast floral arrangements stood like silent guards. Guests walked on imported rugs that muffled their steps. Ava moved through it all unnoticed, as invisible as the wind. As she dusted the intricate banister of the grand staircase, a frail cry reached her ears. An elderly woman had dropped her cane and stumbled dangerously close to falling. Without thinking, Ava rushed over and caught the woman by the arm. "You're safe now, ma'am. Let me help you to a seat," Ava said softly. With slow care, Ava guided her to a velvet bench, handed back the cane, and offered her a warm smile. The woman grasped Ava's hand gratefully. Unseen by Ava, a tall figure paused at the far end of the lobby. Mr. Alexander Cole, owner of the Imperial Heights Empire, known for his icy reputation and relentless standards, stood still. His cold gray eyes softened for just a heartbeat as he watched Ava's unnoticed kindness. He turned away, saying nothing, disappearing into the elevator. Ava smoothed the front of her simple housekeeping uniform and returned to work. She had no idea that one quiet act of compassion had just shifted the course of her life. Outside, the early morning wind hissed between the revolving glass doors. Ava pushed her cart forward into the maze of corridors, unaware of the storm already gathering behind her. The cold wind sliced through the early streets of Manhattan as Ava Johnson pushed her cleaning cart into the back entrance of the Imperial Heights Hotel. Inside, the walls of marble and gold stood silent, indifferent to the woman in the plain uniform moving unnoticed through its halls. As she crossed the grand lobby, she noticed an elderly woman wobbling dangerously on the staircase, her cane having slipped from her grip. Without hesitation, Ava rushed forward and caught her before she fell. "Let me help you, ma'am," Ava said softly, steadying the woman's trembling arm and retrieving her cane. She guided her to a nearby velvet chair. The woman gave Ava a sharp glance, yanked her arm away, and straightened her coat with a huff. "Next time, be more careful. I don't need someone like you grabbing me." Ava blinked in shock but stayed silent, bowed her head slightly, and stepped back. From the mezzanine balcony above, Mr. Alexander Cole had paused mid-stride. His cold gray eyes softened just briefly as he witnessed the moment. His expression shifted into something unreadable before he turned and walked away. Ava resumed her duties without complaint. Not 5 minutes later, Clara Reynolds intercepted her in the corridor with a clipboard in hand and a scowl on her face. "You're wasting time. The presidential suite is a disaster from last night's event. You'll clean it alone," Clara snapped. "And don't think I'll cover for you if you're late finishing the rest of your floors." Ava's heart sank. The suite was usually a 3-person job. She nodded quietly. "Yes, ma'am. Everyone just put him." She spent 5 back-breaking hours scrubbing stains, hauling linens, and picking up shattered glass, her body aching but her resolve intact. As she emerged into the hallway, Logan was waiting, leaning smugly against the wall. "Better get used to it, Ava," he smirked. "This place doesn't owe you anything." Ava tightened her grip on the cleaning cart and walked past him without a word. The next morning, Ava stepped into the service corridor with her cart. The hotel buzzed quietly under the soft glow of chandeliers and expensive wall sconces. She barely had time to start her routine when Clara's sharp voice echoed behind her. "Logan says you broke a vase on the 7th floor last night," Clara snapped. "Go clean it up before anyone notices." Ava frowned. She hadn't been anywhere near the 7th floor, but protesting would only make it worse. "Yes, ma'am," she said quietly. Dragging her cart upstairs, she found no broken vase, but she dutifully polished every inch of the hallway until it shined. Later that morning, Ava noticed a guest in a wheelchair stuck at the thick edge of a decorative rug. The man struggled awkwardly as other staff walked by, pretending not to notice. Ava stepped forward. "Let me help you, sir," she said warmly, bending down to adjust the wheels and lift the rug corner so he could pass. The man frowned at her and waved his hand dismissively. "About time someone did their job properly," he muttered, not even glancing back as he rolled away. Ava stood still for a moment, swallowing the sting. She quietly returned to her duties. Far across the lobby, near the grand piano, Mr. Cole closed a leather folder and watched in silence. His expression remained still, but his gaze followed Ava for a second longer than usual before he turned and walked away. By early afternoon, the hotel buzzed with a different kind of energy. Businessmen in tailored suits hurried through the lobby, briefcases in hand, while tourists lounged over long lunches in the Atrium Cafe. Ava wiped the sweat from her brow and pushed her cart toward the linen closet. As she rounded the corner, she spotted a young housekeeper, no older than 20, sobbing quietly behind a decorative column, her uniform wrinkled and her name tag askew. Ava paused. She recognized the look: humiliation, exhaustion, hopelessness. Quietly, Ava approached and knelt beside her. "First week?" she asked gently. The girl nodded, eyes red and wide. "I messed up the VIP lounge," she choked out. "They said, just so, if I screw up again, I'm fired." Ava placed a comforting hand on the girl's shoulder. "It happens to all of us. You'll be fine. Let's finish the VIP lounge together." For the next hour, Ava worked alongside her, folding napkins, polishing glass, restoring order to the chaos. The girl's breathing calmed. Her hands steadied. Before slipping away, she whispered, "Thank you, Ava." No one else noticed. No one else cared. Except someone did. Across the mezzanine, Mr. Cole leaned casually against the banister, a newspaper tucked under his arm. His gaze rested on Ava for a moment longer than necessary. No smile, no nod. Just the slight tightening of his jaw before he disappeared back into the crowd. Before Ava could even catch her breath, Clara stormed into the VIP lounge, eyes narrowing at the sight of Ava still in uniform. "What are you doing here? This is not your assigned floor," Clara snapped. Her voice was sharp enough that two nearby guests glanced over. "I was just helping," Ava started. "I didn't ask for excuses. I asked for obedience." Clara cut her off. "You've wasted enough time. Take the dirty laundry down, and if you're late clocking out, consider it a strike against your record." Ava swallowed the burn rising in her throat, nodded once, and silently returned to pushing the overloaded laundry cart down the endless corridor. The sun had begun to dip behind the tall glass towers of Manhattan, casting long golden streaks across the hotel lobby. The once bustling atrium had settled into a quieter rhythm as evening guests trickled in for dinner reservations. Ava was making her way toward the staff elevator when she noticed a small Yorkshire Terrier trembling at the bottom of the grand staircase. Its collar tag clinked softly as it shivered, clearly lost. Without hesitation, Ava knelt and scooped the frightened dog gently into her arms. She wrapped it in the soft scarf she wore to protect against the cold winds and stroked its fur. "Easy, little one. We'll find your owner," she whispered. After a few minutes of walking calmly through the hallways, a woman in an expensive fur coat rushed forward, panic flashing in her eyes. "Oh my God, Winston!" the woman gasped as Ava handed her the tiny dog. She snatched the pet without so much as a thank you. "You're lucky nothing happened to him." Ava blinked. "I'm glad he's safe, boss ma'am." The woman had already turned and walked away. Ava exhaled quietly and returned to the service corridor. Just beyond the grand lobby, half hidden in shadow near the darkened bar, Mr. Cole stood still. His steel-gray eyes followed Ava's small act of kindness and the cold dismissal that followed. His expression remained unreadable, but his fingers tapped slowly against the smooth surface of a glass in his hand before he turned and walked away. As Ava reached the housekeeping station to gather fresh towels, Logan was waiting. "Look who's still running around like a stray dog," he mocked. "Should have known you'd get stuck with all the garbage jobs." He pushed past her roughly, knocking the bundle of clean linens from her arms onto the floor. Ava froze for a second, then knelt and began silently refolding the scattered towels. The late afternoon sun streaked long shadows across the polished floors of the Imperial Heights Hotel. The grand lobby had quieted as guests prepared for the evening ahead. Ava was heading toward the linen room when she spotted a tiny Yorkshire Terrier trembling near the revolving door, soaked and shivering from the cold wind sneaking inside. The dog's collar clinked faintly as it moved in small circles. Ava knelt gently and scooped the frightened dog into her arms. She wrapped it carefully inside her scarf to keep it warm. "Don't worry, little one. We'll find your person." A few minutes later, an elegantly dressed woman stormed into the lobby, eyes wide with panic. "There you are," she gasped, rushing toward Ava and yanking the dog out of her arms. She hugged the animal tightly, then glared at Ava. "What were you doing with my dog? Were you trying to steal him?" The woman's voice rose sharply. A few nearby guests stopped and stared. Ava stood frozen, stunned. "No, the remaining I found him outside in the cold. I was just bringing him back." The woman narrowed her eyes suspiciously, then scoffed loudly. "Just know I'll be watching you," she snapped, before turning away without a single word of gratitude. Ava stood silent, her hands still gripping her scarf, swallowing the humiliation. She turned and walked back toward the service hall. Unnoticed by the angry guest, Mr. Cole stood in the darkened corner of the bar, his eyes locked on Ava's small figure retreating down the hall. His jaw clenched tightly as he quietly sipped his drink. As Ava reached the service corridor to collect clean towels, Logan leaned lazily against the wall. Well, pet sitting now? You'll do anything for a tip, won't you?" he sneered. With a shove of his elbow, he knocked the folded linens from her arms onto the ground. Ava froze for a moment, then knelt silently to pick up the fallen towels, her face calm but her heart heavy. The hotel had fallen quiet under the silver glow of moonlight. The last of the guests had disappeared behind heavy mahogany doors. Ava pushed her cart through the silent hallways, exhaustion weighing on her every step. Near the elevator, an elderly couple stood surrounded by a mountain of heavy luggage. The husband glanced around, frustrated. The bell desk had closed hours ago. "Do you need help, sir?" Ava offered gently. The man nodded with relief. "Yeah, thank you." The staff vanished, "And we can't lift these ourselves." Ava bent down and began hauling the large suitcases into the elevator, her arms aching with fatigue. Floor by floor, she escorted them all the way up to their suite. When they reached the door, the husband smiled and offered a warm nod. "Thank you, one. Iwahe de one Suriname." That was very kind. The wife, perfectly manicured and wearing an expensive fur wrap, narrowed her eyes at Ava as she set the last bag inside. Her voice was sharp and cold. "Check your things," she whispered to her husband, but loud enough for Ava to hear. "It's late. To Rano. People like her, you can never be too careful." Ava stood frozen for a moment, the words cutting deep. She quickly bowed her head. "You have a good night," Ava murmured quietly and stepped out into the hallway. Clara appeared as if from nowhere, her arms crossed and eyes narrowed like knives. "You're not paid to play bellhop," Clara snapped. "This is the last time, Ava. Stay in your place. Brika Yashurvai Dum One. One more stunt like that, and you're done here." Ava simply nodded, fingers tightening around the handle of her cart to stop them from shaking. She walked away without a word. At the far end of the dim corridor, half hidden in the shadows, Mr. Cole stood silently. His cold gray eyes had watched the entire scene unfold. His jaw tightened. Without a word, he turned and strode back toward the executive wing, his mind already made up. The heavy metal door to the staff locker room creaked shut behind Ava. The harsh fluorescent lights flickered faintly overhead as she sank onto the worn wooden bench. Her body aching with exhaustion, she stared at her scuffed shoes, replaying every moment of the day. The endless tasks, the sharp words, the cold stares. Her chest tightened as she wondered how much longer she could endure it. Something was different, though. Earlier that evening, she had noticed the front desk clerks whispering and glancing her way. In the staff lounge, two assistant managers abruptly stopped talking as she entered. Even the security guards had given her long, unreadable looks. Ava brushed it off as paranoia. Clara still barked orders. Logan still rolled his eyes and muttered under his breath as she passed. Nothing had changed, or so she thought. The door to the back corridor swung open. Ava froze. Standing in the doorway, dressed in a dark tailored suit, was Mr. Alexander Cole. His presence filled the narrow room effortlessly. For the first time since she had started at the Imperial Heights, the elusive owner had sought her out directly. "Ava Johnson," he said evenly, "you've had quite a day." Ava scrambled to her feet, nerves firing. "Sir, I was just finishing up. I know I stayed late. He held up a hand, silencing her gently. I've been watching, Mr. Cole said. His sharp gray eyes studied her face, calm but piercing. Not just today. People assume I don't see, but I notice things most people don't. Ava stood frozen, heart racing. Was this it? Was she being fired? Her mind raced through everything she might have done wrong. Mr. Cole nodded once. I want you to come see me in my office tomorrow morning. We have something to discuss. And just like that, he turned and walked out. Ava stood motionless, pulse thundering in her ears. She barely noticed Clara watching from across the hall, a smug grin spreading across her face. The bitter wind slapped Ava's cheeks as she stepped out into the cold night. The streets of Manhattan glowed under the street lamps. Ava hugged her thin jacket tighter around herself as she walked slowly toward the subway station. She had no idea that everything she thought she knew about her life was about to change. Ava Johnson was born and raised in a cramped walk-up apartment in Harlem. The walls were thin, the heating unreliable, and the sirens outside were a constant reminder of the hard life waiting beyond the door. Ava never knew her father. Her mother, Denise Johnson, worked long hours as a janitor, scrubbing floors and cleaning offices long after the city went to sleep. It was just the two of them against the world. From the time Ava was old enough to walk, she understood survival meant sacrifice. Denise taught her to hold her head high, even when others tried to tear her down. Kindness matters. Even when no one notices, her mother often whispered as she kissed Ava goodnight after another exhausting double shift. Money was always tight. Ava wore secondhand clothes and packed simple lunches for school. Bullies mocked her worn shoes and hand-me-down coats, but Ava never let it break her. Instead, she buried herself in books, studying under the flickering light of a single lamp in their tiny kitchen. She walked miles each day to attend a better school out of her district. Teachers quickly noticed her determination. Ava excelled in every subject, but especially in hospitality and business classes. Her dream was clear. One day, she would run her own hotel. That dream, however, never came easily. The barriers around her were real. She was a young black woman from a poor neighborhood, constantly reminded by strangers and even some teachers of what she could not do. People like you don't get to be in charge, one bitter counselor once sneered. Ava ignored them all. She earned a scholarship to a small college nearby and juggled classes with part-time cleaning jobs. Her mother's health began to decline just as Ava reached her second year. Hospital bills piled up fast. Ava made the impossible choice. She dropped out of college and took on every cleaning shift she could find to pay for her mother's care. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months. Her mother fought hard but passed away just before Ava's 23rd birthday. The grief was unbearable, but Ava stood strong. She walked past the same hospital where her mother had spent her last days and whispered through her tears, "I'll keep going. For you." Armed with nothing but resilience and her mother's lessons, Ava applied to dozens of hotels across New York City. The answer was always the same: no experience, no degree, no chance. Until the Imperial Heights Hotel offered her a single opportunity as a housekeeping attendant. On her first day, Ava stood outside the towering glass facade of the hotel, staring up at the polished windows that reflected the clouds above. She tightened her grip on her thin coat, took a deep breath, and whispered, "One day, maybe one day, I'll belong in there too." With that, Ava stepped through the grand revolving doors into a world that was never designed for her, yet one she was determined to navigate on her own terms. The early days at the Imperial Heights Hotel were the hardest of Ava's life. The grandeur of the lobby, the elegance of the guests, and the polished perfection of every corner stood in brutal contrast to the way she was treated behind the scenes. She was invisible to most, except when something went wrong. Ava worked endless shifts, cleaning rooms, scrubbing bathrooms, and hauling heavy laundry carts through the maze of back corridors. The pay was low, the demands were high, mistakes were not forgiven. Every morning, she tied her worn sneakers, smoothed her plain navy uniform, and whispered the same mantra her mother had taught her: be kind, even when the world isn't. She kept her head down and did her job. Yet the slights came daily. Some guests looked through her as though she wasn't there. Others barked orders without even acknowledging her as human. The staff wasn't much better. Clara Reynolds, the senior supervisor, made it her mission to remind Ava of her place. She nitpicked every task, piled on extra duties, and never missed a chance to scold her in front of others. Logan, the smug bellboy, whispered cruel jokes behind her back and bumped her cleaning cart when no one was watching. Still, Ava refused to give in. When her shift ended, Ava often rode the subway to the public library in Brooklyn, where she sat under the yellow glow of reading lamps, devouring books on hospitality, business, languages, and cultural etiquette. She spent hours taking notes, determined to learn the skills she would need if her chance ever came. Her hands ached, her feet blistered, but Ava studied late into the night, then woke before dawn to start another day of toil. On weekends, she volunteered at local community centers, helping underprivileged teens build resumes and prepare for job interviews. Ava saved every spare dollar, often skipping meals to stretch her paycheck. She sent small donations to community charities and quietly left groceries on the doorstep of neighbors who had fallen on hard times. Despite everything, she never let bitterness take root. One cold winter night, after working a double shift, Ava stared at the grand chandelier in the center of the lobby as she waited for the staff elevator. The soft sparkle of its crystals seemed almost cruel. It reminded her of how far away she still was from the life she had once dreamed of. But as she stepped into the elevator, she squared her shoulders. One day doesn't have to mean never, she whispered to herself. The doors closed, and Ava disappeared back into the hidden world of service hallways, ready to face another long, thankless day. Years slipped by like fleeting shadows as Ava continued to build a quiet legacy of resilience at the Imperial Heights Hotel. While other housekeepers came and went, Ava became the one constant in the unseen world of service. She learned the patterns of the hotel, the quirks of regular guests, the silent code of survival behind its gilded walls. Ava never asked for recognition. She simply worked harder, stayed later, and carried herself with grace, even when no one was watching. She became known among a few kind guests as the helpful one, though most still walked past her without a second glance. Her uniform remained the same, her name tag simple, Ava, housekeeping. But Ava's inner life had quietly evolved. The library books multiplied at home. Her notebook, once empty, grew thick with pages of hotel terminology, language phrases, and notes on international customs. She practiced conversations late at night, reciting them into the darkness of her small studio apartment. She saved up to take an online course in hospitality management. It was expensive, and she often went without to afford the tuition. When she finally passed the certification exam, no one at the hotel knew. Ava folded the certificate carefully and tucked it into the back of her closet, a secret promise to herself. Then came the day that changed everything. It had been a brutal shift. Clara had snapped at her 3 times before noon. Logan had purposely knocked over her cleaning cart, scattering towels across the floor. Exhausted, Ava had just finished helping an elderly couple with their luggage when she turned to find Mr. Cole standing silently at the end of the corridor, watching her. Ava froze. She had never been this close to the hotel's elusive owner. His presence radiated quiet power. Ava immediately lowered her gaze, heart pounding. To her surprise, Mr. Cole's voice was calm. "You've had quite a day, Miss Johnson," he said simply. Ava swallowed hard. "Yet, sir, I've been watching," he continued. "Not just today." Her breath caught. "Come to my office tomorrow morning. We have something to discuss." With that, he turned and walked away. Ava stood alone in the hallway, her thoughts racing. Had she done something wrong? Was this her final warning? The uncertainty gnawed at her. That night, as she stepped out into the icy air of Manhattan, Ava pulled her thin coat tightly around her shoulders and stared up at the towering hotel windows. She had walked through those doors so long ago, whispering, "One day, maybe one day." Now, with every step back toward her tiny apartment, Ava could not shake the feeling that one day had finally arrived. Tomorrow held a promise she dared not speak aloud. The morning sunlight streamed through the towering windows of the Imperial Heights Hotel. Its brilliance bounced off the marble floors and gilded edges, illuminating the pristine lobby as if nothing in the world could disturb its perfect image. Ava Johnson walked through the employee entrance with her usual quiet resolve. Her uniform was crisp, her hair pulled tightly into a neat bun, yet inside her stomach churned with nerves. Today she was expected in Mr. Cole's office, Sur Sanctum. Clara Reynolds stood waiting near the housekeeping station, arms crossed, a superior smirk curling her lips. Well, Clara sneered as Ava approached. "Imagine that. Mr. Cole wants to see you? I wouldn't get too comfortable if I were you." Ava kept her gaze lowered and her expression calm. "Don't think for a second this means anything," Clara continued. He probably just wants to warn you for all your little stunts. Running around the hotel playing bellhop? Helping lost dogs? Assisting guests who didn't even ask? That's not your job, Ava. Ava stood silently, her hands clenched tightly at her sides. Clara stepped closer, her voice dropping to an icy whisper. You've embarrassed the department. You've embarrassed me. When he's done with you, don't bother coming back here thinking things will go back to normal. Logan sauntered past and snickered under his breath. Better start polishing that resume, Ava. The words stung, but Ava refused to let them see the impact. She took a deep breath and walked past them, her footsteps light yet determined. As she approached the elevator that would take her to the top executive floor, a place no housekeeping staff ever dared to go, Ava straightened her posture. For the first time, she did not feel invisible. She pressed the button and watched the numbers climb slowly. Her reflection in the gleaming doors stared back at her. Tired eyes, worn uniform, but something different now, a quiet strength. The soft chime signaled her arrival. As the doors opened, Ava stepped out onto the luxurious executive floor with its thick carpets and silent air of power. The journey that had once felt impossible was no longer out of reach. She was ready to face whatever waited behind Mr. Cole's office door. To return to present, Ava meets Mr. Cole. The executive floor felt like another world. The heavy silence was broken only by the soft click of Ava's shoes against the plush carpet. Gold-framed art lined the walls. Soft, recessed lighting cast a warm, golden glow. The doors were taller here, more imposing, like gateways to a place not meant for people like her. At the end of the hall stood a double door with a small brass plaque, Alexander Cole, President and CEO. Ava paused, took a deep breath, and raised her hand to knock. Come in, came the voice, deep and calm. Ava stepped inside. The office was vast yet minimal. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline of Manhattan. A large mahogany desk sat near the center, perfectly organized. Behind it stood Mr. Cole, tall and poised in a dark tailored suit. He gestured to the chair opposite his desk. Miss Johnson. Please, sit. Ava lowered herself carefully onto the soft leather chair, her heart racing. Mr. Cole folded his hands and studied her quietly for a moment. I imagine you're wondering why you're here. Yeah, sir, Ava replied softly. You've worked here longer than most people realize. Mr. Cole continued, his voice measured. You've endured things that many would not. Ava remained silent, unsure where this was leading. I've seen your actions. I've seen your restraint under cruelty, your kindness without expectation of reward. Ava's breath caught slightly. I've also seen how others have treated you, Mr. Cole said, his voice hardening briefly. That will end. He leaned back slightly, his gaze never leaving hers. I have created a new position in this hotel, Assistant Guest Relations Coordinator. It requires someone who understands compassion, discretion, and grace under pressure. Someone I trust. Ava stared, stunned. I would like to offer that position to you, effective immediately. The role comes with full training, a salary triple your current wage, and a path to management. For the first time in days, Ava's composure faltered. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say yes, Mr. Cole said with a rare, faint smile. Because you've already earned it. Ava nodded slowly, emotion rising in her chest. Yes, sir? Thank you. Good. Mr. Cole stood. You'll start tomorrow. Until then, take the rest of the day off. Ava stood too, feeling the weight of years of struggle begin to lift. As she stepped back into the hallway, she allowed herself the smallest of smiles. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, it finally felt like it had truly begun. The news spread like wildfire among the staff before Ava even made it back to the locker room. Whispers followed her down the corridors. Did you hear? Mr. Cole called her to his office. No way. Ava? Housekeeping Ava? Logan leaned against a service cart, arms crossed, smirking cruelly as Ava passed. Don't think a promotion will change anything. You'll always be one of us, he called after her. Clara stood at the corner, arms crossed tightly, jaw clenched in frustration. She watched Ava with narrowed eyes, her lips tight as if holding back the words she wanted to spit. Ava kept walking, head high, her heart racing. The uniform felt different now. The same navy fabric, but no longer a symbol of invisibility. She walked taller. Later that day, she reported to the front office for orientation. The polished desk, the soft lighting, the luxurious scent of fresh flowers. It was a different world. A staff member handed her a folder labeled Assistant Guest Relations Coordinator. Ava traced the letters with disbelief. She slipped into her new tailored uniform for the first time. Soft navy fabric, gold trim name tag, Ava Johnson, Assistant Guest Relations. The reflection staring back at her from the full-length mirror was both familiar and entirely new. As Ava stepped out into the lobby to begin shadowing the guest services team, Mr. Cole stood at a distance, watching quietly. He nodded once to himself. The pieces were finally in motion. Ava moved confidently across the marble floor, her heels clicking sharply. No one pushed past her. No one knocked her cleaning cart aside. She was no longer the invisible woman. What Ava didn't know was that this was only the beginning of the real test ahead. The days of silent endurance were over. Now, her choices would echo far beyond the back hallways and linen closets. The stage was set. The following afternoon, the Imperial Heights Hotel brimmed with energy. A group of international investors had arrived for a highly anticipated meeting with Mr. Cole to discuss future global expansion. The atmosphere was electric. Everything had to be perfect. Clara stood in the hallway near the conference room, clipboard in hand, barking quiet orders at junior staff. Ava, now wearing her sharp new uniform, walked past with calm purpose. Heads turned. Some whispered, "We know." Logan's usual smirk froze for the first time as Ava strode by without acknowledging him. Inside the lavish conference room, Mr. Cole prepared for the presentation. At the last moment, he stepped outside and spotted Ava. "Miss Johnson," he called smoothly. Ava turned, startled. "Yes, sir? Join us. I may need assistance with translations or guest concerns." Ava hesitated for only a breath. Of course, Clara, standing nearby, stiffened, her face draining of color. The doors to the conference room opened. The foreign investors, powerful and impeccably dressed, filed in. Ava stood at Mr. Cole's side as he led discussions. At one point, a small misunderstanding arose over the arrangement of guest amenities. The conversation tensed. Ava calmly stepped in, explaining the cultural expectations in fluent Dutch and French. The investors smiled appreciatively. The tension dissolved. As the meeting concluded, the lead investor extended his hand to Mr. Cole. "You run a remarkable hotel," he said warmly, then turned to Ava. "And you have an extraordinary team." Mr. Cole's cold mask softened just slightly. "I agree." The investors departed, leaving the room buzzing with silent victory. Mr. Cole motioned for Ava to follow him back into the lobby. The staff froze as the two walked side by side through the grand marble space. Near the main desk, Clara stood frozen, wide-eyed, watching as Mr. Cole led Ava toward the center of the lobby. With a calm voice, Mr. Cole addressed the assembled managers and staff. "I want to make something very clear," he said. "This hotel succeeds because of people like Miss Ava Johnson. Her professionalism, compassion, and dedication embody what the Imperial Heights stands for." The lobby was silent. "She has been promoted to Assistant Guest Relations Coordinator, effective immediately." The words fell like thunder. Clara paled visibly. Mr. Cole's voice dropped lower, sharper, and any further mistreatment, disrespect, or sabotage against Miss Johnson or any employee displaying excellence will result in immediate termination. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ava stood motionless, stunned. For the first time, Clara was speechless. Logan ducked behind the luggage desk, avoiding eye contact. Mr. Cole nodded once and walked away, leaving Ava standing in the center of the lobby. The staff slowly began to applaud. The tide had turned. The weight of Mr. Cole's announcement still hung heavy in the air. The echo of scattered applause faded as staff returned to their duties, casting occasional glances toward Ava. Clara stood rooted near the main desk, her face pale, hands clenched tightly at her sides. Logan hovered behind the luggage cart, shifting uncomfortably under the weight of the stairs. The next morning, an official notice was posted in the staff lounge. All employees were required to attend an emergency meeting with Mr. Cole and the hotel's executive team. The staff filed into the grand ballroom in tense silence. Clara walked stiffly to her seat, her usual commanding presence visibly cracked. Logan trailed behind her, unusually quiet. Mr. Cole stood at the front, his expression cold and unreadable. This hotel has operated under the highest standards, he began, but recent internal reviews have exposed patterns of harassment, discrimination, and abuse of authority. A hush fell over the room. My staff is my responsibility, Mr. Cole continued. Those who have used their positions to bully or belittle others no longer have a place here. He paused, then motioned toward the Human Resources Director, who stood with two sealed envelopes in hand. The director approached Clara and Logan, handing each an envelope. Clara's hands trembled as she tore it open. Logan opened his more slowly, dreading what he already knew. Effective immediately, Clara read aloud, her voice cracking. Your employment at the Imperial Heights Hotel has been terminated. Gasps rippled through the room. Clara's face flushed with anger and disbelief. You can't do this. I've worked here for years. Mr. Cole's reply was calm and final. I just did. Logan stood silently, shoulders slumped, as the reality settled over him. Security staff approached quietly. Clara glared at Ava one last time, venomous and cold. You'll regret this, she hissed. Ava met her gaze steadily. No, I won't. Without another word, Clara and Logan were escorted out of the ballroom. The room remained silent. Mr. Cole looked across the staff assembled before him. Let this be the beginning of a better culture, he said firmly. A culture where hard work and dignity are respected above all else. The staff nodded slowly, hope flickering in their eyes. Ava stood quietly near the back of the room, stunned. The impossible had happened. The chains she had silently carried for so long had finally broken. The news spread quickly through every hallway, every department, and every back corridor of the Imperial Heights Hotel. For the first time, the invisible walls that divided the staff and management began to crumble. In the days that followed, Ava noticed small but powerful changes. The kitchen staff, who had once kept their distance, now greeted her warmly when she passed. The front desk clerks, who used to avoid eye contact, smiled and nodded in respect. One afternoon, the young housekeeper she had once comforted approached Ava nervously near the linen room. I heard what happened, she whispered. Yeah, thank you. You gave me hope to stay. Ava smiled softly. We all deserve better. Even some longtime guests began to notice. An older gentleman who had once barely acknowledged her now paused at the front desk. Miss Johnson, he said with a gentle nod, this hotel feels different. I believe you had something to do with that. Ava thanked him humbly and continued with her duties. The atmosphere across the hotel transformed. Staff, who had once walked with their heads down, now stood a little taller. Kindness returned in small gestures. A door held open, a tray carried for a tired coworker. A quiet word of encouragement passed in the hall. One evening, as Ava walked through the grand lobby, she passed the same grand chandelier she had once stared at in quiet despair. It no longer mocked her with its unreachable beauty. Instead, its soft golden light felt warm and welcoming. Mr. Cole stood nearby, observing her from a distance. Their eyes met briefly. This time, Ava did not look away. Mr. Cole gave the slightest nod of approval, then turned and walked back into the quiet power of his world. Ava stood still for a moment, feeling the weight of the journey she had survived. The whispers, the cruelty, the injustice, they no longer defined her. The applause she had never asked for had finally arrived, not in claps, but in the simple dignity of respect. The woman who had once been invisible now walked forward with quiet pride. The hotel had changed. So had she. The official termination of Clara and Logan sent ripples through the New York hospitality world. The Imperial Heights Hotel had rarely made bold internal moves, but this decision became a statement across the industry. Ava learned of the aftermath only in pieces. Clara tried to file a wrongful termination complaint, but her history of complaints from other employees surfaced quickly. No hotel in the city would hire her again. Rumors swirled that she had taken a job at a tiny motel far from the prestige she once lorded over. Logan vanished quietly from the industry, unable to find work at any reputable property. Word had spread fast, and few wanted to risk their reputation by hiring him. Inside the Imperial Heights, a sense of accountability replaced fear. Department heads held team meetings reminding staff that the old culture of bullying and favoritism would not be tolerated. New employee support programs were introduced. Anonymous reporting hotlines were established, and sensitivity training sessions became mandatory. Ava continued in her new role quietly but confidently. One afternoon, as she helped coordinate a VIP arrival, she overheard two junior housekeepers chatting nearby. Did you hear? No more Clara? No more Logan. It feels safer now. Ava smiled faintly and kept moving. Her path occasionally crossed with Mr. Cole in the weeks that followed. The exchanges were brief, professional nods or short conversations about hotel operations, yet a mutual understanding lingered between them. One evening, Mr. Cole stopped as they walked opposite directions in the hallway. You've handled the transition with remarkable dignity, Miss Johnson, he said. Thank you, sir, Ava replied. You've set a new standard here. Never forget that. As he walked away, Ava stood for a moment, reflecting. The people who had tried to keep her down were gone. The people who once ignored her now greeted her warmly. The Imperial Heights Hotel had changed. So had she, and this time, it was on her terms. The months that followed brought a quiet but undeniable shift in Ava's life. Where once she had moved unseen through the grand halls of the Imperial Heights Hotel, now she was met with nods of respect and warm smiles from staff and guests alike. Her reputation extended beyond the hotel's walls. A respected industry blog ran an article titled, "The Woman Who Helped Transform the Imperial Heights Culture." Ava's name became a quiet symbol of strength and integrity in hospitality circles. One morning, an unexpected email arrived. The prestigious New York Hotel Association had selected Ava to receive their annual Rising Star Award, recognizing individuals who demonstrated extraordinary leadership and compassion in their field. Ava stared at the screen in disbelief. When she stepped onto the stage at the gala weeks later, the massive ballroom erupted in applause. Dressed elegantly for the first time, Ava stood under the brilliant lights, heart pounding. The host's voice rang out. This year's recipient is proof that kindness, integrity, and perseverance can transform not only one life, but an entire workplace. As Ava accepted the glass award, she spotted Mr. Cole standing discreetly at the back of the room. Their eyes met. He nodded once, proud yet distant. Later, back at the hotel, Ava placed the award on a small shelf in her modest apartment beside her mother's framed photograph. She traced her fingers gently over the old picture. I did it, Mom, Ava whispered. I stood my ground. Her phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from coworkers and friends she had once only dared to call acquaintances. The next day at work, as Ava passed the grand chandelier in the lobby, she smiled for the first time without hesitation. The whispers that once followed her with judgment now followed with admiration. She had survived the storm, and she had won. But more importantly, Ava had kept her dignity intact. For the first time, she truly felt like she belonged. The city glowed softly under the golden hues of dawn as Ava walked the familiar streets toward the Imperial Heights Hotel. For the first time in years, her steps felt light, unburdened by fear or uncertainty. The revolving glass doors welcomed her into the lobby that had once felt cold and distant. Now, it radiated warmth. The faces she passed held respect and recognition. There were no whispered insults, no dismissive glances. At the front desk, the young housekeeper she had once comforted offered a wide smile. Morning, Ava. Ava smiled back. Good morning. As she continued her rounds, Ava paused at the grand chandelier in the center of the lobby. She stared up at the brilliant cascade of crystal and light, remembering the night she had once stood there alone, feeling invisible. Not anymore. Mr. Cole appeared beside her, his expression softer than she had ever seen. You've made quite an impact, he said quietly. I only did what I thought was right, Ava replied. That's what made the difference. They stood in silence for a long moment, both understanding that the journey had changed them both. Mr. Cole offered a rare smile. There's talk of expanding our brand internationally. I may need someone with your instincts to help lead the way. Ava raised an eyebrow, surprised but pleased. I'd be honored, sir. Later that day, Ava stood in the hotel's rooftop garden, the city skyline stretching endlessly before her. The wind played gently with the edge of her uniform. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. The woman who had once scrubbed floors in silence now shaped the very culture of the hotel she had once feared. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. As the first light of the morning sun touched the horizon, Ava smiled and whispered to herself, one day has finally arrived. Weeks after Ava's promotion, the Imperial Heights Hotel underwent the kind of transformation no one thought possible. Mr. Cole led the charge, launching the most comprehensive internal reform the hotel had ever seen. New employee guidelines were implemented emphasizing dignity, respect, and zero tolerance for harassment. A confidential reporting system empowered staff at all levels to speak up without fear of retaliation. Ava was invited to contribute directly to the hotel's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. She brought firsthand knowledge of the silent struggles so many employees faced. At the first committee meeting, Ava stood at the head of the table, surrounded by department heads, human resources, and managers who had once overlooked her. "The goal is simple," she said calmly. "No one should ever feel invisible here again." There was a pause, then slow nods of agreement. The message had finally been heard. Training seminars were rolled out across all departments. For the first time, new hires were taught not just policies and procedures, but empathy, cultural sensitivity, and leadership through service. Morale Rosso. Guests began to notice subtle differences. Warmer smiles, more patient conversations, a sense of true hospitality that extended beyond luxury. The change didn't happen overnight, but it was real. Late one evening, Ava walked the quiet halls of the hotel. She paused outside the grand ballroom where a charity gala for underprivileged hospitality students was being held. A new tradition, Mr. Cole and Ava had started together. Through the glass, Ava watched young students in borrowed suits and secondhand dresses listening to guest speakers who had once stood where they stood. She smiled. The legacy was beginning. One brisk morning, a handwritten note arrived at Ava's new office desk. Simple, elegant, and direct. "See me at your earliest convenience. Amernamin, Surinam. Cole." Ava smiled to herself, folded the note carefully, and made her way to the executive wing. Mr. Cole greeted her with a rare, genuine smile. "Good morning, Miss Johnson. Have a seat." She settled into the chair across from his desk, her heart steady this time, no longer clouded by fear. "Mr. Cole leaned forward slightly. "We're preparing to open our first European property," he said. "Amsterdam. We need someone to represent our new culture overseas. Someone who understands not just the operations, but the soul of what we're building." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "I want you to lead the cultural transition team." Ava's breath caught for just a moment. "Sir, you're ready, Mr. Cole said firmly. "You prove that. Not just to me, to everyone." He slid a thin folder across the desk toward her. Inside, plans, travel itineraries, contact lists for the Amsterdam opening team. Ava ran her fingertips lightly over the folder, feeling the significance in its weight. From scrubbing floors to shaping the identity of an international hotel chain. She looked up, her voice strong. "I'll do it." Mr. Cole nodded, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. "Prepare well, Miss Johnson. The world is watching." As Ava left his office, folder in hand, the sun spilled through the tall windows, casting a golden path before her. Her journey wasn't ending. It was just beginning. Months later, Ava stood in the lobby of the Imperial Heights Amsterdam. The architecture blended rich European charm with the understated elegance she had helped define back home. Soft sunlight filtered through tall, stained glass windows. The scent of fresh flowers filled the air. Staff bustled about with calm efficiency, and a warmth radiated from every exchange. Ava watched quietly, her heart full. She walked past the front desk where a young woman in training was being gently coached by a supervisor. "We treat everyone with respect here," the supervisor said kindly. "That's the standard Miss Johnson brought us." Ava smiled, unnoticed. As she toured the property, she spotted small but powerful signs of the new culture. A bellhop stepping aside to let a housekeeper pass first, a manager pausing to help a guest with heavy bags, a guest relations trainee offering patient assistance to a lost traveler. In the executive office, a framed quote hung prominently on the wall. Ava paused to read it. "Kindness matters even when no one notices." Her mother's words. Ava reached out and brushed her fingertips lightly across the glass. Later that evening, she stood on the rooftop garden of the Amsterdam property, gazing out over the glowing canals and twinkling city lights. The wind tugged gently at the edge of her scarf. Ava inhaled deeply, letting the moment settle. From invisible cleaner to international leader, from surviving to shaping legacies, she smiled softly, knowing her journey was only just beginning. Somewhere deep inside, she whispered one last time. One day, and now, every day. As Ava stood watching the lights dance across the Amsterdam canals, her journey came full circle. What began as silent endurance had transformed into empowered leadership. Her story wasn't just about one woman in one hotel. It was a story for anyone who had ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed. A story for those who had been told they didn't belong. In a world that often values appearances over substance, Ava proved that integrity, compassion, and quiet strength could create real, lasting change. Her kindness, even when ignored or ridiculed, planted seeds that blossomed into a culture of dignity and respect. So remember, wherever you are, whatever you face, kindness matters, even when no one notices. Stand tall, lead with grace. Your actions speak louder than any title ever could. If Ava's journey inspired you, tell us in the comments what moment touched you the most. Have you ever been underestimated and proven others wrong? Drop a heart in the comments if you believe in silent strength. Share this video with someone who needs to hear Ava's story today. And don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe for more true stories of courage, compassion, and the power of standing tall against the odds. Only on Unveiled Wealth.